There are many fighters in the UFC who are small for the weight class, but that hasn't stopped them from conquering giants in their divisions. They say the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and that has proven to be true for many fighters. So here is 5 fighters who have conquered giants in the UFC. Number 5. Before Demetrious Johnson became the long-reigning UFC flyweight champion, he started his career as a bantamweight in the WEC. He stands 5 feet 3 inches tall and was very small for the bantamweight division. However, his lightning fast speed and his huge gas tank helped him rack up wins over top bantamweights such as Nick Pace, Damasio Page and Kid Yamamoto. He next faced former WEC bantamweight champion Miguel Torres at UFC 130. Miguel Torres stood at 5 feet 9 inches tall and had a 10-inch reach advantage, which many had thought that would give Demetrious Johnson some trouble. But that wasn't the case. In the fight, Demetrious Johnson used his speed and footwork to slowly pick Miguel Torres apart, as well as mixing his striking with his takedowns. Despite having a size disadvantage, he was the aggressor throughout the 3 rounds, winning the fight by a unanimous decision. Now as the flyweight champion, he has completely cleared out his division and is considered to be the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Number 4. Before Frankie Edgar called the featherweight division his home, he fought as a lightweight and had great success fighting in the 155-pound weight class. He stands 5 feet 6 inches tall and was very undersized for the lightweight division. However, that didn't deter him from reaching his goal of becoming a UFC champion. Whilst fighting at 155 pounds, he had no trouble making the weight limit, as he cut almost no weight at all. He made use of his speed and movement to earn victories over top lightweights such as Tyson Griffin, Mark Bocek, Spencer Fisher and Sean Shirk. He next faced then UFC lightweight champion BJ Penn at UFC 112. BJ Penn stood at 5 feet 9 inches tall and was clearly the bigger man going into the fight. Only a few people gave Frankie Edgar a chance of dethroning BJ Penn. In the fight, Frankie Edgar was able to fight at a high pace, using his speed and movement to land strikes and takedowns, winning the fight by a unanimous decision, becoming the new UFC lightweight champion of the world. It seems as though he was comfortable fighting larger opponents and had shown that he could hang with the best fighters in the world. Number 3. When Randy Couture fought as a heavyweight, he seemed very small for the weight class, as all of the heavyweights in the division seemed very huge. But that didn't stop Randy from running through his opponents to become the UFC World Champion. He has victories over big heavyweights such as Kevin Randleman, Maurice Smith and Pedro Hizzo, which showed that he was comfortable with fighting top heavyweights at that time. After Randy Couture returned from a break from the sport, he faced then UFC heavyweight champion Tim Sylvia at UFC 68. Tim Sylvia stood at 6 feet 9 inches tall and had a 12.5 reach advantage. He was 13 years younger than Randy Couture and was clearly the bigger man going into the fight. Many had thought that Tim Sylvia's reach and size would overwhelm Randy Couture, but that wasn't the case. In the fight, Randy Couture dropped Tim Sylvia with the overhand right and has stuck to him like glue for the first round. In the last 2 rounds, he mixed his striking with his takedowns to win the fight by a unanimous decision, becoming the new UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Number 2. Cain Velasquez is one of the most scariest heavyweights in UFC history. What he has done to high-level UFC heavyweights is unreal. He has faced heavyweight giants throughout his UFC career, where he has always been the smaller fighter. He stands 6 feet 1 inches tall and weighs in roughly at 240 pounds, which is quite small and light for a heavyweight. But he has proven many times in his fights that size does not matter. He easily defeated a much bigger Ben Rothwell at UFC 104 in an impressive fashion, and next faced then UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar at UFC 121. Going into the fight, Brock Lesnar had a 4-inch reach advantage and weighed 20 pounds more than Cain Velasquez, but the fight showed that size doesn't mean anything. In the fight, Brock took Cain down early in the fight. Cain was able to get back up to his feet and absolutely brutalized him, eventually finishing him by TKO to become the new UFC heavyweight champion of the world. The next big heavyweight he faced was Antonio Silva at UFC 146. Antonio Silva was 24 pounds heavier and had a 5-inch reach advantage, but these advantages didn't help him one bit in the contest. In the fight, Cain Velasquez absolutely mauled Antonio Silva with his vicious ground and pound, where he finished him by TKO in the first round. Cain Velasquez had left Antonio Silva in a pool of blood and it looked like something out of a horror movie. Cain Velasquez has proved over and over again that size does not mean anything, as he has finished the most elite heavyweights in a devastating fashion. Number 1. Hoist Gracie entered the UFC as a 170-pound fighter who possessed world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At that time, people were not aware of how effective Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was until Hoist Gracie put it into action. In his fights, we saw him dominate larger men, where he was able to take the fight to the ground and easily get the submission. He quite easily defeated Art Jimmerson, Ken Shamrock and Gerard Gaudu. He even defeated a fighter who was over 250 pounds in down 7 by a triangle choke at UFC 4. Over time, the new generation fighters had saw that it was necessary to train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to have a well-rounded game. Hoist Gracie still to this day holds the record for the most submissions in UFC history, which is a total of 11. Hoist Gracie is the original giant killer and has shown that a superior technique defeats size when it's executed properly.